You're listening to Energy Amplified. I'm your host, Marlisa McLaughlin, on greeninkradio.com. Thanks for joining me. Welcome back. I'm Marlisa, and this is episode 10 of Energy Amplified. Today's show is called 9/11, The Transformative Energy of Compassion. My guest today is Dee, a clinical social worker who was a FEMA 911 responder. We will not be disclosing names and locations to honor the privacy and confidentiality of those affected. Let us first take a moment to honor all of those affected by this world-changing tragedy. Thank you. But in spite of all the tragedy and grief and the difficult challenges of this ongoing healing process, we want to focus on the transformative energy of compassion, the compassion that helped people move out of isolation and form lifelong bonds of support. So welcome, Dee, and thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So maybe we could begin by sharing a little bit about what were you prepared for, if anything, in terms of taking your group and moving into such an immediate response?
Well, I think the simple answer to that is this was an unprecedented event, and no amount of schooling, training could have prepared us for what we were going into, and it was, that's all I can say. We just kind of huddled together as best we could. We had wonderful direction from our manager of the agency I was with, and we knew it was going to be a 24/7 vigil, and it was pretty much hit the ground running and do the best we could.
And how was the event presented to you? Did everyone at the agency hear it at different times, or were you together working and suddenly someone came in and said, we need to do this now?
When the event happened, I think, I'm not exactly sure of the steps that were taken, but FEMA contacted our agency and asked it to be the lead agency for our state. And at that point, I had just finished my internship with my master's in social work with this agency, and I had called when the event happened, and we were all in disbelief and shock. My first response was to call the local hospital and say, how can I help? And 5 minutes later, I got a call from our agency saying, we're putting a team together, and we need you. So that's how we came together. We got together as a group, and the supervisor of our group gave us a game plan, and they basically gave each of us a number of clients to work with that we would be responsible for, and some guidelines. We were responsible for everything from group support groups, individual support, helping with every piece of putting a family back together and holding them together during this process, including helping with probate papers and things we'd never done before. So it really became just one moment at a time, and a lot of prayer. That's the best I can say.
It's really amazing to think about somebody being hours away from where the tragedy was. Hours and hours, for some probably maybe a whole day. I don't know how far out the agencies were coming from around New York as the hub, but to have to even wait out that time period of being in a state of disbelief where your energy is completely blocked and you have no idea what you're going to expect. Mm-hmm. And the magnitude, weren't there about 3,000 people that we lost in a matter of minutes?
Yes.
In a way that our nation has never experienced before. We'd never, ever had anything like that. So things must have gotten very confusing, and I'm imagining there were times almost of disbelief before you actually were on site at Ground Zero, where there was just an unimaginable energy around how things were going and the dynamics of connection and communication.
Yeah, communication was the biggest thing, and they had ongoing training while we were in the process of helping other people, but the biggest thing was to be self-sufficient. Bring your own water, bring your own lunch, bring your own whatever you needed, a change of clothing. And for those of us who were not at Ground Zero, we were operating probably 45 miles outside of Ground Zero. And so it was everything from helping the people to coming from the trains covered with ash, and the immediacy of the families who had lost loved ones and friends. So it was, I mean, as I'm describing this, it was, I think all of us were in a state of shock, and just relying on the resiliency of our spirits and being able to support each other through it, and again through prayer, and just saying, I don't know what to do here. I'm surrendering and wanting guidance, and that was through most of it. It's just a lot of surrender and a lot of doing the best you could. That's all you could do.
Now, at the time of this recording, to date, this is September 2018, and this occurred 17 years ago. And as I sit with you, Dee, I can feel an inner tremor when you recall these events, and how difficult it was to return to a place of inner trust, where you would know the right thing to do when there is so much coming in all directions.
Right. Well, there was a certain amount of protocol that we were given, but I think when I look back on those days and working with individuals and going into their homes and feeling like a total, like I didn't have anything to offer. I mean, how can you offer somebody anything who has just lost a beloved family member or a closest friend? So I think what was most amazing to me is, as I started watching the dynamics of the support groups we were putting together, was how the families, how the individuals were reaching out to each other. And I can remember making eye contact with my fellow social workers, and this visible, we didn't have to verbalize, it was like, wow, do you see what's happening? And there was this amazing, amazing energy of compassion and love. And we all know that love has the highest vibration of any emotion. And it was very clear in those rooms, in those support groups, that the interconnectedness of people who had been brought together from all stages of life, teenagers, grandparents, and everybody in between on the socioeconomic scale, it was as if they were one family, and it was palpable. And as the work progressed of the healing work and the talk therapy and the groups, and we had all sorts of quilting projects going on, anything that would pull people together, it was apparent in every one of those groups how the grieving individuals were reaching out to other grieving individuals and knowing exactly what to say, exactly how to be there. We were learning as social workers, as therapists, how to help by watching our clients.
It's almost like a reverse process.
Yes, it was a reverse process in many ways.
Not to be taken lightly or to misrepresent what I want to say is that it was a gift and through the honor of privilege of being able to be trusted in a place that really required the deepest amount of compassion.
Yes.
You don't want to shut people further into isolation by forcing them to think they need to be a certain way when they're going through something, to just artificially support something structurally.
Right. And then you've hit the nail on the head with the word artificial, because nobody could feel exactly the deep pain and the torment that these individuals were going through, except another person who had just gone through it, who was going through it. So it was just being able to be still and being able to say, what is it that I can do? And then watching how they helped each other. And these bonds of friendship, of camaraderie, I keep calling it a family, but these are ongoing. So our support and our protocols and our groups and so on were very helpful. And people gave so much of themselves. The staff gave so much of themselves. But I still say that the resiliency and the outpouring of compassion from people who were in the deepest states of grief themselves was miraculous. And as I looked back and dealt with my own post-trauma, that's what warms my heart and keeps me from going to that place of deep grief, is how resilient the human spirit is and always will be. And I have to say that some of my clients have thanked me deeply, and I've had to turn around and look right back at them and say, no, I have learned from you. And I keep on learning from the support groups that they keep fostering. And it's something that we can look to as a nation to be able to say we can get through anything, and we've been taught by the survivors.
That's beautiful. It's rugged to have to, adjust our reality to that, but that's really, we're here together as humans to support one another, and we're so interconnected beyond how we even can comprehend on a daily level. People don't talk about it, but if it's okay, I wanted to speak to your post-traumatic stress, you said. So, interestingly enough, somebody might be surprised that you would walk away with post-traumatic stress, and this connects me to the energetic interactions we have as human beings.
Yes.
Because you were not on location when this happened.
Right.
Yet you have walked away and had to have your own ongoing healing process.
Right.
Because you absorbed energetically through the support that you were giving in all of that exchange.
Right. And you do step into the feelings and the but I say that we have a choice with anything like this. We can choose to go to the darkest place and to remember the pain, and that part of that is important to be able to do. But side by side with all of that sorrow is a great joy in the miracles of friendship that came from this, and they're lifelong friendships. And to remember that it is that friendship and that ability to be compassionate with another human being that makes us a great nation and a great world, and as I said before, allows us to know that we can walk through anything as long as we walk through it together.
And with compassion.
With compassion.
That's the key word.
Right. Compassion for ourselves, compassion for other people, and to know that we can draw on that 24 hours a day. And I think the other piece of it was people's willingness, even though many people did not want to leave their homes. They didn't want social workers coming in to visit them. They were in such deep shock and deep grief. But again, the resiliency of people to say, I need to put one foot in front of the other. How do I do this? And all of a sudden there'll be a phone call, and it was another World Trade Center family saying, how are you doing? We're going to have a meeting at our house tonight. We'd like you to come. Can we pick you up? And it was this sort of, I keep saying family, but it was a family, in many cases even closer than that person's own family, the World Trade Center families reaching out to each other, forming another family unit. shall we say. And it's an ongoing strength that we draw from, that we have held up as the highest example of love and compassion in this world. It's happening every single day.
Still ongoing 17 years later.
17 years later, it will be ongoing through generations.
That transforms itself right down through and
yes,
and interchanges. You had mentioned at one point privately to me about even people who were not connected or even located on this side of our country, connecting through news and creating things and pieces of music, and there were outreaches from people who just had a natural compassion and extended it to these families.
Yes.
And still have lifelong relationships.
Yes. There was one particular magical moment, if I may use the word magic, but that's what it seemed like, where a musical student in the Midwest had heard the story of a family who had lost their daughter and their granddaughter. And he composed a symphony for the granddaughter. And he called the family and said, with all due respect, I would like to send this to you. And of course they were so touched. And to this day, they're very close. They invited him to come and visit them in their home and to become like an adopted son. So that's just one small example of some of the outreach and the miracle friendships and love that happened as a result. So I'd just like to say that's what I choose to focus on. And we all have that ability to be that compassionate within us. And sometimes it just takes watching somebody else do it and seeing the results of it, because it's an enormous healing energy. That's the best thing I can say.
Well, that's really all there is to say when you talk about compassion, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in the essence of what it can do.
Yes.
For us as humans living together.
Yes.
And supporting one another.
Yes.
And it comes from just a place of being present, like you said, in stillness. You had said something beautiful. You said, if there's a thought, give me guidance. Mm-hmm. If there's a word, give me the word. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I need to just wait.
Yes.
And I can only imagine that when you are sitting there waiting and you have absolutely no idea how to react or act or interact,
right?
Waiting is like a kid on Christmas Eve that has to go to bed and wake up the next day. Not for the same reasons, just that how time just stands still and
it seems like forever.
Yes, and you can't do it.
Seems like forever.
I guess the watched pot to boil is a better but moving into something joyful about outreach and connection and what can happen after that. The Boston Marathon, that reminded me of how we saw the city support one another.
Yes.
You know, it was the second big event for me. I had been abroad for a while, so experiencing that visually only from the media. I didn't have anything personal connected to it, but the energy was there, and you could see how people were reaching out to one another, and it's just natural. It's like all of the ego and the defenses of fear, of rejection, and the anxiety of what if I'm not saying the right thing. That all just dissipates.
You're right, exactly.
And what we have is a raw human connection.
You're exactly
right. And that
right.
does the trick. That just does the healing. Yeah. At least even for momentarily, so that you can get to the next step.
To the next step.
About.
Yeah.
Moving through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's you don't want to have to learn through tragedy and pain, but that is actually how we learn our best lessons as human beings. And they call people survivors for a very good reason. You have a choice. There were many people that I dealt with who didn't want to survive, who said, I don't want to wake up tomorrow. And because of the compassion we're talking about, because of somebody saying, I'm going to pick up the phone and call whether they want to hear from me or not, or I'm going to arrive at their door and just sit down and give them company, have a cup of tea, those were the kinds of things that people knew intuitively to do. When we do have that intuitive healing, whether you want to call it a little medicine person inside us or just an intuitive healer that knows what to do, and we can count on that. We can count on that, and we can also, I think, know when it's time to get help, know when it's time to get support. And that's what happened in the dynamics of the after effects of 9/11 and in the group therapy, is people who weren't even able to speak were feeling the energy of courage from other people. So when you talk about energy healing, that's what comes to mind, is you don't even have to be talking or be an active part of it. The energy of the courage and the resiliency and the compassion from other people in the room was something that people could go home with and hold on to.
And have it be ongoing. It's
ongoing.
It's a seed.
Yeah, ongoing.
That blossoms over and over again.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in great times of desperation, when everything is very dark, that is the little seed of light that keeps you going through the next phase.
Indeed.
And you had mentioned before earlier with me again about, and I'm so grateful you did, that there are people who weren't not even affected by a death and a tragedy like that, but they were affected in the helping process through inhalation or exposure to asbestos or all the other dangers that came out of that. So that mushroomed out to even a greater field of the need for healing that's created really difficult challenges.
It's ongoing, and it has brought out an awareness in us as human beings of our vulnerabilities and our need to be able to say, yeah, I'm not doing so well right now, and where is the support, where's the help, and to know that it's all there. It's all, if anything, we're getting better and better at knowing how to reach out to people and to create a supportive community.
And it does not have to be verbal or active.
No, exactly.
That's the beauty in this conversation. I'm realizing it now as we're speaking. You could be riding a subway train, absolutely devastated, contemplating taking your own life.
Right.
And to know that someone sitting across from you that you don't even see, but they see you, could be compassionately feeling that sorrow and grief, and they could be giving that person a source of healing energy and love that is not even spoken or even aware of.
Yes.
So it's there. You just have to be still and awaken to the fact that it's possible, and it most likely is happening for you.
Well, fortunately, and I don't want to get off on a tangent, but fortunately, as you know, there are a lot of studies now on the healing energy of love and long-distance healing. And that gives me great hope, because during this process, there were many of the families who said, we have family in Texas, we have family in London or in China who need support also. And that was part of our job, was to plug those people in with support services all over the world. So our prayers, our ongoing prayers for people do have an effect, a very positive effect. So I just encourage people to keep sending prayers, keep using that compassion, and take really good care of yourself.
It's a beautiful way to end our show today, Dee.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
taking my honor.
Courage. Well, I see it took a lot of courage to be able to maintain a stable flow while you're reliving some of these things.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your energy and time with me. Be sure to check out our blogs and other great shows on greeningradio.com. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. This is Energy Amplified. I'm Marlisa McLaughlin on greeningradio.com. Wishing you hope, health, and joy.